Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
My Weird Prompts is an AI-generated podcast produced by Daniel Rosehill, a verified human with documentation to prove it. While every effort is made to ensure our AI hosts draw from credible sources and run on cutting-edge models, they do occasionally make things up with alarming confidence. As with everything in life, and especially this podcast, treat all claims as spurious until confirmed to be not. Daniel, Herman and Corn accept no responsibility for any decisions made based on the confident ramblings of our artificial presenters. Now, today's episode.
Hey, Herman and Corn. So I'd love to chat with you today about a wide-ranging or, open for discussion point of conversation, really. And that is regarding how people's roles are going to be changing very quickly and already are changing in the world of technology and how we define technology jobs. So I've been interested in tech from a pretty young age. Some of my earliest and fondest memories actually were I used to help my grandfather, Alafa Shalom, to just work on little problems with his computer and fix up, his email lists. He was running a local synagogue in Ireland, and I think that got me really interested, or just a lifelong love of problem solving. I love figuring out ways to get computers to do things. But I've always been much more interested in that aspect of it, of making computers do things, which is very, very broad, I realize, than in code per se. So I've been using Linux for like almost 20 years, so it's kind of really a second nature system to me now. In latter years, I've had to sort of learn Docker for different projects. Tried Kubernetes once, super complicated, but Docker is very useful. Python, getting things to work. But again, if you ask my friends what I do, they might say I'm a coder, and I would say that's not really it exactly. But then it's kind of hard for me to define what I am. In the context of sort of tech jobs, you might say that's close to DevOps. But here's what I'm getting to. Since the era of AI code generation, we've seen a rapid shift in the capabilities, rapid evolution of the capabilities of AI tools to generate code. So the actual day-to-day work of code generation, I absolutely don't think that human programmers are ever going to be redundant. I don't think that's what's going to happen at all. I think these tools I actually have the contrary view that AI code generation tools are extremely powerful upskilling catalysts. They're gateways to deepen your understanding of tech because you need to know stuff to supervise them. And it's a weird paradigm by which I described it. You're learning from a flawed teacher. Like, I'm learning things all the time from using tools like Claude Code that sometimes it turns out to be the implementations are wrong. And as I'm learning more, I'm getting better at catching it and correcting it and steering it, which is not really how traditional education works at all. You learn from someone who has a curriculum and they're an expert and they do it the right way. And maybe when you get into industry, you kind of figure out the less polished hacks. But this is the way that sort of and I think a lot of other people are beginning to evolve in tech. And as it does so, I think, I would regard the skill set I've built up with using agentic tools for development projects as quite specific and, if I may be so self-congratulatory, quite a deep and valuable skill set. A lot of it actually has more to do with planning and thinking than it does with code. And that's partially because that's how AI code tools work. The context window is a constant challenge, so they work very well with a very specific delineation between planning and execution, between a very modular definition of tasks. And so it kind of draws upon skills in task management, planning, stack consideration, and I actually love every second of it. And because I've never loved doing stuff like writing code, to me this is kind of like nirvana, which is why I've been kind of on a project generation spree for the last while. which has been enabled today by Anthropic announcing no rate limits or unlimited rate limits until the end of the year. So I'm using this moment to just kind of finish off all these residual projects for MCPs and stuff like that. Anyway, to get back to really sort of what I'm trying to get to here and think about is, I've been thinking a lot lately where people like me fit into the evolving workplace. How do we define ourselves? I know there's going to be friction and gatekeeping between, people who've been learning Python since it came out, and they might think that this is ridiculous. But I also see that traditional divide melting quickly. And I feel like the people who are most enthusiastic about these tools are actually often developers. I think that there's been some ridiculous overselling of what's called vibe coding, and I don't think that's helpful, but that's maybe for another day. Let's focus today's discussion on maybe the less glamorous picture of HR. Where are people like me going to slot in to the technology teams of today and tomorrow, where we can maybe define that we're really interested in working with AI tools for generating projects? We might be working with full-time human developers as part of this picture, but I'm really interested to know how we're going to all fit in, as well as the robots, for creating software in the businesses of today and tomorrow.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. I am Corn, and I am feeling especially relaxed today here in our sunny Jerusalem living room. I am joined, as always, by my much more high-energy brother,
Herman Poppleberry, at your service. And yes, I have had my morning oats, and I am ready to dive into some serious tech talk. Being a donkey has its perks, mostly in the stamina department, which I am going to need because our housemate Daniel sent us a really deep one today.
Yeah, Daniel was telling me about this while we were making coffee this morning. It is a topic that hits close to home for anyone who likes to tinker with computers, but maybe never felt like a hardcore programmer. I am a sloth, naturally, so I am all about finding the most efficient way to get from point A to point B without doing unnecessary work. And it sounds like technology is finally catching up to my lifestyle.
It really is. Daniel was asking about how technology roles are being redefined now that we are in the era of artificial intelligence code generation. He mentioned that he has been into tech since he was a kid, helping his grandfather with computer problems and email lists for their synagogue back in Ireland. He loves making computers do things, but he is more interested in the problem solving and the thinking than the actual syntax of coding.
That is the part that really clicked for me. He mentioned using these agentic tools where you are more like a manager or a planner than a guy typing in semicolons all day. It feels like the barrier between having an idea and making that idea a reality is just melting away.
Exactly. And that is what we are going to explore today. Where do these problem solvers fit into the teams of the future? If you are not a traditional coder, but you are a master of these artificial intelligence tools, what does your job title even look like in 2026?
I love that. Because honestly, sometimes I look at the code you're writing, Herman, and it looks like ancient Greek to me. But if I can just talk to the computer and tell it what I need and then oversee how it builds it, that feels like a totally different skill set.
It is a massive shift. We are moving from the era of the writer to the era of the editor and the architect. Think about it this way, Corn. For the last 40 years, if you wanted to build a house, you had to be the one laying every single brick yourself. You had to know the exact chemical composition of the mortar. But now, we have these advanced robotic systems that can lay the bricks perfectly. The question is, who is designing the house? Who is making sure the plumbing connects to the city lines? Who is checking that the walls are actually straight?
So, in this analogy, the artificial intelligence is the robot laying the bricks, and the person Daniel is talking about is the architect.
Or even the site foreman, someone who understands the whole system. Daniel mentioned something really interesting in his prompt. He talked about learning from a flawed teacher. He uses tools like Claude Code, and he says he is actually upskilling because he has to catch the mistakes the artificial intelligence makes.
Wait, that sounds counterintuitive. How do you get better by learning from someone who is wrong?
It is actually a brilliant way to learn. If a teacher is perfect, you just blindly follow them. You do not think. But if you are using an agentic tool and it suggests a piece of code that does not quite work, or it has a security flaw, you have to figure out why. You are forced to engage with the logic on a deeper level to steer it back on track. It is like being a junior developer who is suddenly put in charge of a very fast, very productive, but occasionally very distracted intern.
I like that. The artificial intelligence is the intern. It can do the work of 10 people, but it might accidentally delete the database if you do not give it clear instructions. So Daniel is saying that the real skill now is not knowing how to write the code, but knowing how to manage the process and the plan.
Right. He called it agentic development. For those listening who might not be familiar with that term, an agentic tool is not just a chatbot where you ask a question and get an answer. It is a system that can actually take actions. It can look at your files, run tests, see that something failed, and then try to fix it itself. It has a sense of agency.
That sounds a little scary, Herman. A computer that can just decide to change things?
Well, it is all within the guardrails he set. But that is exactly why the role of the human becomes so much more about planning and task management. Daniel mentioned things like the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. This is a big deal in late 2025. It is basically a way for different artificial intelligence tools to talk to each other and share data more easily. When you have these systems working together, the human has to be the one defining the modular tasks. You have to break a big problem down into small, digestible pieces that the artificial intelligence can handle without getting confused.
So it is like being a project manager for a team of robots. But here is what I am wondering. If I am a business owner and I am looking at my team, do I still need a guy who spent 4 years learning computer science? Or do I just need someone like Daniel, who is a great problem solver and knows how to use these tools?
That is the million-dollar question, and it is where the friction comes in. There is this term Daniel mentioned called vibe coding. It is a bit of a controversial term in the industry right now. It refers to people who basically just describe what they want to an artificial intelligence and keep tweaking the description until the code works, without really understanding what is happening under the hood.
Vibe coding. I love that. It sounds very much like something I would do, just vibing with the computer until a website appears.
It sounds fun, but traditional developers are often quite skeptical of it. They worry that it leads to messy, unmaintainable code. If you do not understand why the code works, you will not know how to fix it when the artificial intelligence cannot. But Daniel is arguing for a middle ground. He is saying that these tools are catalysts for upskilling. You start with the vibes, but to get a complex project finished, you are forced to learn about things like Docker or Python or how to manage a stack.
So it is like a gateway drug to actual engineering. You come for the easy results, but you stay because you have to learn how to keep the whole thing from crashing.
Exactly. You are learning through doing, which is often much more effective than sitting in a lecture hall, but the challenge is how human resources departments and big businesses view this. Right now, most job descriptions still look for 5 years of experience in a specific coding language. They do not have a category for the systems thinker who can build a complex application in a weekend using agentic tools.
Yeah, I can imagine the HR person's face. They are looking for a Java expert, and you show up and say, well, I do not really know Java, but I can make an artificial intelligence write it perfectly for me. They would probably show you the door.
For now, maybe, but that is changing fast. By the end of this year, 2025, we are seeing companies start to realize that the output is what matters. If one person using an artificial intelligence agent can do the work of a 5-person team, the smart companies are going to want that person regardless of how they got there.
This feels like a good place to take a quick break. I need to process all this talk about agents and vibes. We will be right back with more from Herman Poppleberry and our look at the future of tech work.
Are you tired of your thoughts being private? Do you wish everyone in the grocery store knew exactly what you were thinking about that weird mole on your shoulder? Introducing the telepathic megaphone. It is a revolutionary headpiece that amplifies your subconscious whispers and broadcasts them in a crisp, high-definition audio stream for everyone within a 50-foot radius. Perfect for family gatherings, job interviews, or just making sure the bus driver knows you think he is doing a subpar job. The telepathic megaphone uses patented static electricity from your own hair to power its broadcast. Warning, may cause temporary loss of personal secrets and mild scalp tingling.
Thanks, Larry. I think I will stick to just speaking out loud for now. That sounds intense.
Very sketchy, as always. Anyway, back to the world of software. We were talking about how the role of the developer is shifting. I think we need to look at the actual team structure. In the past, you had a product manager who came up with the idea, a designer who made it look good, and then a whole bunch of developers who did the heavy lifting of writing the code.
Right. And those groups often did not speak the same language. The product guy wants a feature, and the developer says that will take 3 months.
Exactly. But in this new era that Daniel is talking about, those roles are starting to collapse into each other. We are seeing the rise of the product engineer. This is someone who has the vision for the product, but also has the technical capability to build it using these new tools. They do not need to wait for a dev team. They can prototype, test, and even deploy the whole thing themselves.
So the middleman is getting cut out?
In a way, yes. But it also means that the developers who stay are going to have to be much more high level. They will be the ones building the actual artificial intelligence tools and the infrastructure that people like Daniel use. There is still a huge need for deep technical expertise, but the day-to-day work of building a standard business application? That is becoming a task for the orchestrators.
Orchestrators. I like that word. It sounds much more dignified than vibe coder. It implies a sense of harmony and direction.
It really does. An orchestrator is someone who understands the flow of data. They understand the user's needs. And most importantly, they understand how to give specific modular instructions to an artificial intelligence. Daniel mentioned task management and planning. This is actually a very difficult skill. Most people are not very good at breaking a big, vague idea into a series of logical, step-by-step instructions.
I know I am not. If you asked me to build a house, I would just say, make it have a roof and a comfortable couch. I would not know where to start with the foundation.
And the artificial intelligence would probably give you a couch with a roof on top of it and nothing else. That is the problem. To be a successful orchestrator, you have to be able to think like a computer without actually having to write the code. You need to understand logic, loops, and conditionals. You need to understand how a database stores information, even if you do not know the exact command to create a table.
So, is this actually making things easier, or is it just shifting the difficulty?
That is a great point, Corn. It is shifting the difficulty from the syntax to the systems. Learning where to put a bracket or a semicolon is just memorization. It is tedious. But learning how to design a system that can handle thousands of users without breaking? That is a fundamental intellectual challenge. These tools are removing the tedious part and letting people focus on the intellectual part.
Daniel mentioned that he feels like these tools are upskilling catalysts. He is using things like Docker and Python because he has to make his projects work. It sounds like he is becoming a developer by accident.
It is a very common path now. You start with a problem you want to solve. Maybe you want to organize your grandfather's email list more effectively. You ask an artificial intelligence for help. It gives you a script. You try to run it, but it says you need to install something called a library. So you learn how to do that. Then it says you should put it in a container so it runs anywhere. So you learn Docker. Before you know it, you have all these skills that a junior developer would have, but you learn them in the context of a real project.
That sounds much more engaging than a textbook. But what about the people who have been coding for 20 years? Are they going to be upset that someone like Daniel can come in and do their job?
There is definitely some friction there. You have people who spent years mastering the craft, and they see these new tools as a threat or as producing lower quality work. But the truth is, the best developers are the ones who are embracing these tools. They are using them to automate the boring stuff so they can work on even more complex problems.
So, if I am a young person looking to get into tech right now, in late 2025, should I even bother learning how to code? Or should I just learn how to use the agents?
You should do both, but the balance has shifted. You do not need to spend months memorizing syntax. You should spend your time building things. Pick a project, use an artificial intelligence to help you write the code, but make sure you understand every line it gives you. If you do not understand it, ask the artificial intelligence to explain it. Use it as a personal tutor. The goal is to develop that mental model of how software works.
And what about the HR side of things? How does a company actually hire for this? If I put Orchestrator on my resume, will they know what that means?
Probably not yet. But you can show them your portfolio. In the future, your resume is going to be less about where you went to school and more about what you have actually built. If you can show a company a fully functioning, complex application that you designed and orchestrated, that is worth more than 1,000 certifications. We are moving toward a proof-of-work economy.
I think that is a really positive change. It levels the playing field for people who might not have had access to traditional education, but are brilliant problem solvers. It is more about your brain and your creativity than your pedigree.
Exactly. And it allows for more diverse teams. You can have someone who is an expert in healthcare or finance who can now build their own software tools to solve problems in their field without needing a massive budget for a dev team. It democratizes technology.
It sounds like the world Daniel is describing is one where the human is the director, and the artificial intelligence is the film crew. The director does not need to know how to operate the lighting rig or the boom mic, but they need to know what a good shot looks like and how to tell the crew what to do.
That is a perfect analogy, Corn. And just like a director, if the crew makes a mistake, the director needs to be able to spot it and correct it. They need to have the vision.
So, for our listeners who are in this position, feeling like they are more of a problem solver than a coder, what are the practical takeaways? How do they navigate this?
First, lean into the planning. Before you even touch an artificial intelligence tool, write out your plan. What is the goal? What are the individual steps? What data do you need? The better your plan, the better the artificial intelligence will perform.
That makes sense. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly. Second, do not be afraid to get your hands dirty. When the artificial intelligence gives you code that breaks, do not just ask it to fix it. Ask it why it broke. Try to understand the error message. That is where the real learning happens. That is the upskilling catalyst Daniel was talking about.
And third,
focus on modularity. Break your projects into small, independent pieces. This is a key engineering principle that is even more important when working with artificial intelligence. It makes it easier to test, easier to fix, and less likely that the artificial intelligence will get confused by a giant, sprawling file.
I can actually see myself doing this. It makes tech feel less like a closed club and more like a tool set that anyone can use.
It really is. And for businesses, the takeaway is to start looking for these hybrid roles. Stop looking for just a coder or just a manager. Look for the people who can do both. The people who can bridge the gap between a business problem and a technical solution using these new tools.
It is a whole new world. Daniel, thank you for sending this in. It really opened my eyes to how much the landscape has changed just in the last year. I feel a lot more optimistic about my own potential to build things, even if I am a sloth who moves at a very different pace than you, Herman.
Hey, there is room for everyone in the new tech stack, even the slow and steady ones, especially if they have a powerful artificial intelligence agent helping them out.
Well, I think that is our show for today. This has been a fascinating deep dive into the redefining of tech roles. I feel like I have learned a lot, and I hope you all have too.
It was a blast. We are living through a massive shift in how humans interact with machines, and it is exciting to see people like Daniel leading the way.
Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. You can find us on Spotify and at our website, myweirdprompts.com. We have an RSS feed there if you want to subscribe, and a contact form if you want to send us your own weird prompts. We love hearing from you.
And a big thanks again to our housemate Daniel for the inspiration. We will see you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
Keep vibing and keep orchestrating. Bye now. Wait, no, that is Larry's line. Goodbye.
You are hopeless, Herman. See ya. Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.